The Lost Land Bridge.
What if an entire continent once connected two worlds, and then vanished beneath the sea? Imagine walking for months. No roads, no maps. Only ice stretching as far as the eye can see. This was the land bridge that carried the first humans into a new world, a path forgotten by time, yet still echoing in history.
Beneath the waves of time.
For as long as humans have existed, we've told stories about lands that vanished beneath the sea. Myths of islands swallowed by the ocean. Of continents lost to storms, earthquakes, or the anger of gods. But what if these were not just myths? What if beneath the waters of our world lie the real footprints of humanity's forgotten journeys? Beneath the blue surface of our planet are hidden worlds, plains, valleys, and mountain ridges that once stood above the waves. A time when the Earth looked utterly different, when continents were wider, seas shallower, and the distance between lands not as vast as it seems today. Scientists call this era the last ice age, around 20,000 years ago, when glaciers locked away much of Earth's water, and the ocean stood nearly 120 meters lower than today. And in that ancient landscape, vast land bridges connected worlds now separated by oceans. From Asia to the Americas, from Australia to the islands of the Pacific, from Britain to mainland Europe, invisible highways once joined continents, shaping the destiny of humankind. These were the pathways of migration, the silent witnesses to humanity's greatest journey, the journey out of isolation, into the wide and waiting world. But perhaps the most mysterious of all, is the land bridge that may have birthed civilization itself. A place that linked people, ideas, and worlds, and then vanished, leaving behind only traces beneath the sea. The memory of lost lands. Across ancient cultures, the idea of the world before the flood appears again and again. The Sumerians wrote of Eridu, the first city, washed away by rising waters. The Indian Puranas speak of Dvarka, a golden city beneath the ocean. The Greeks told of Atlantis, the mighty island swallowed in a single night. And in the Pacific, the Polynesians speak of Hawaii, the ancestral homeland that sank beneath the waves. For centuries, these were dismissed as myths, poetic echoes of collective imagination. But in the last 100 years, as oceanographers began to map the seafloor, something extraordinary emerged. There were indeed lost continents, real landmasses once above water, now buried under hundreds of meters of sea. And within them, the possible footprints of early humans.
Strich. Karte Doggerland, the drowned heart of Europe.
Off the coast of Britain lies one of the most striking examples. Doggerland, a vast plain that once connected Britain to mainland Europe. Around 10,000 BCE, this landscape was alive. Rivers flowed, forests spread, and herds of mammoths and deer roamed freely. Human families built camps along its shores, hunted, gathered, and lived in what was once the green heart of northern Europe.
Then came the melt.
The ice sheets retreated, the seas rose, and slowly, year after year, the waters crept across the land. Around 8,000 years ago, a massive underwater landslide, known as the Storegga Slide, sent towering waves racing across the North Sea. In hours, the last dry parts of Doggerland were gone, drowned beneath the cold waters. Today, fishermen sometimes pull ancient bones, tools, and even antler carvings from the seabed, fragile reminders of a lost homeland. But Doggerland is not just a chapter of local prehistory. It's a symbol, proof that beneath every stretch of ocean, there may lie a forgotten world. A world where people once lived, dreamed, and built, only to be erased by time and tide.
Strich. Erde the great land bridges of the ancient world.
Doggerland was not alone. Across the globe, similar lost connections once existed, silent pathways that guided early humans across continents. To the far north, Beringia, the land bridge that once linked Siberia and Alaska, served as the gateway between Asia and the Americas. Here, between glaciers and tundra, the first human migrations crossed into the New World around 20,000 years ago, bringing with them tools, fire, and memory. Generations later, their descendants would become the first peoples of the Americas. In the south, another forgotten bridge, Sundaland, once joined the islands of Indonesia, Malaysia, and mainland Asia into a single vast continent. Where now lie hundreds of islands, there once stretched fertile plains, rivers, and valleys teeming with life. It may have been here that humanity first developed coastal cultures, sailing, and early forms of trade. Even now, beneath the Java Sea, archaeologists have found traces of stone tools and ancient shorelines that once met the open sky. And further still, in the Indian Ocean, lies the mysterious Kumari Kandam, a land spoken of in Tamil legends as the birthplace of civilization. Though its existence remains unproven, sonar scans and submerged ruins along the coastlines of India and Sri Lanka whisper of something, perhaps a truth buried within the myth. Sunrise when the sea rose. Around 11,000 years ago, the Ice Age ended. The great glaciers began to melt, releasing unimaginable volumes of water into the oceans. Sea levels rose by more than 400 feet. Coastlines retreated. Islands disappeared. And with them, entire cultures, erased in slow motion. To the people who lived through it, it must have felt like the end of the world. Every generation watching the horizon come closer. Villages swallowed.
Forests drowned.
The sound of the waves not as comfort, but as warning. Could this collective trauma, this memory of loss, be the origin of the flood myths that appear in nearly every ancient tradition? Perhaps the story of Noah, of Utnapishtim, of Manu, of Atlantis, all are reflections of the same real event. The great melting, when the seas reclaimed the lands of humankind. Echoes of Atlantis. It is tempting to connect these real events with the most famous lost land of all, Atlantis. Described by Plato as a mighty island beyond the Pillars of Hercules, destroyed in a single
day and night of fire and flood.
For centuries, scholars have searched for it, from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, from the Azores to Antarctica. But perhaps Atlantis was not one place. Perhaps it was a memory, a symbolic echo of all the worlds lost beneath the waves.
Doggerland. Sunderland. Beringia.
Each a fragment of the same truth, that humanity once lived closer to the sea, and the sea took it all back.
Strich.
Milky Way, the forgotten pathways.
Ven vitres these lost bridges. Doggerland in Europe, Beringia in the north, Sunderland in Asia. A strange pattern emerges.
Each connects not only lands but civilizations before civilization. Places where early humans met, mingled, and shared ideas that would one day blossom into the first true societies. These sunken landscapes may have been the original crossroads of humanity. The silent classrooms where language, art, and memory began to form. And if we could walk those plains again, beneath the oceans, what would we find?
Ruins? Tools?
Or perhaps something more, something that tells us the story of how the human journey truly began.
Strich. The ocean hides many things.
But sometimes the truth is not lost, only waiting.
Waiting for the tide to fall again.
Sunderland, the drowned continent beneath Asia. Far to the east of India and south of China lies a region of emerald waters and scattered islands.
Indonesia, Malaysia, Borneo, Sumatra, Java.
Today, it is a mosaic of sea and land. But 10,000 years ago, it was one. A vast continent known to science as Sunderland. Stretching across more than 1.8 million square kilometers. Sunderland was once one of the most fertile and densely populated regions on Earth. Here, beneath the shallow seas of the Java, the South China, and the Andaman, lies a continent drowned, a cradle of humanity erased by time and tide. Globe showing Asia-Australia, a continent that time forgot. To imagine Sunderland, we must strip away the waters of the present. Picture instead a continuous landmass. From Vietnam and Thailand in the north, to the edges of Australia in the south, from the Bay of Bengal in the west, to the deep Pacific trenches beyond New Guinea in the east. Rivers once flowed across this landscape. The Sunda River system, now buried beneath the sea. It was rich in tropical forests, floodplains, and deltas. Home to elephants, tigers, rhinoceroses, and the earliest coastal humans. For thousands of years, this was paradise. A world of abundance, where people fished, gathered fruit, and built their lives along river valleys now hidden beneath the ocean. And then, slowly, silently, the sea began to rise. Water wave the great drowning. As the last ice age drew to a close, glaciers melted, and sea levels climbed relentlessly. What had been forest and plain became marshland, then lagoon, then sea. Within a few thousand years, an entire continent disappeared beneath the waves. To the people of Sunderland, this was no gradual change, it was catastrophe.
Village abandon.
Hills turned to islands. Ancestors swallowed by the ocean. Generation after generation watching their world shrink until only the highlands remained. By 700 BCE, what was once a vast and vibrant world had broken into the islands.
We know today.
Java, Borneo, Sumatra, and the Malay Peninsula. All that remains of Sunderland are its mountaintops. And the memories carried by those who fled. Trident emblem legends of the flood. In the cultures that arose from the fragments of Sunderland, stories of a great flood echo like ancient thunder. In the Malay annals, there are tales of lands lost to the sea. Of kingdoms drowned by the anger of gods. The Javanese speak of Gunung Meru, the sacred mountain that once connected heaven and earth, destroyed by waters from below. And the Tamil epics tell of Kumari Kandam, a great land to the south of India. A home of poets, sages, and kings. swallowed by the sea in an age before all others. Across the Pacific, Polynesian navigators tell of Hawaii, the ancestral homeland that sank beneath the ocean, forcing their people to sail eastward in search of new islands. Could these scattered legends all be memories of the same event? The drowning of a continent? Myth, memory, or truth? Perhaps all three, blended in the deep currents of time.
Clues beneath the waves.
For centuries, Sunderland was dismissed as speculation, a poetic reconstruction of what might have been. But then came the evidence. In 2007, marine archaeologists scanning the Java Sea found strange formations beneath the silt. Patterns too regular, too linear to be natural.
Stone alignments. Walls. Foundations.
And in southern India, off the coast of Gulf of Khambhat, sonar imaging revealed massive geometric structures. Rectangular grids stretching for kilometers beneath the water. Carbon dating from samples taken nearby suggested ages of over 9,000 years. If these findings are confirmed, they would rewrite human history, proving that complex societies existed thousands of years before Mesopotamia or Egypt. But the ocean guards its secrets fiercely. Storms, currents, and silt have buried much of what lies below. Yet, the more scientists search, the clearer it becomes. There was once a thriving world here. Microscope the genetic trail. While the ruins remain elusive, the human DNA tells a different story. Genetic studies across Southeast Asia and the Pacific show deep, ancient connections. A shared ancestry tracing back to a single population that lived here, in the heart of the drowned world. From these people came the Austronesians, the seafarers who would go on to populate the islands of the Pacific, reaching as far as Hawaii, New Zealand, and Madagascar. Their language, their navigation, their spirit, all trace back to this submerged cradle. It is as though Sunderland did not vanish. It simply took to the sea. Volcano, the seeds of civilization. What if the roots of human civilization, the birth of farming, trade, and organized belief, did not begin in the deserts of the Middle East, but in the drowned plains of the East? Some researchers, like British biologist Stephen Oppenheimer, believe Sunderland was once the heart of a great Ice Age civilization. A people who watched their world vanish and carried their knowledge to new lands. Perhaps it was they who seeded the early cultures of India, Mesopotamia, and even Egypt. Their stories transformed into myths of floods and lost golden ages. If true, this would make Sunderland not just a lost continent, but the hidden origin of civilization itself. Sunrise echoes in stone and story. Even today, as divers explore the coasts of Indonesia and Malaysia, they find carved stones, fragments of pottery, and what appear to be the remnants of ancient settlements, buried 30 to 50 meters beneath the waves. The local fishermen call these sites Kota Tenggelam, the drowned cities. They tell stories passed down through generations, of ancestors who lived when the sea was far away, when one could walk for days between lands now divided by water.
Science meets memory. Entåget till visper of Artrud long forgotten.
That humanity's earliest achievements may not lie upon the land,
but beneath the waves. Strich. Milchstraße, the ocean of memory.
The story of Sunderland is not just one of loss. It is one of endurance.
Wen the sea rose, the people adapted.
They became voyagers, navigators, and storytellers. They carried the memory of their drowned homeland across the Pacific, etching it into myth, music, and migration. Every island they settled became a piece of the old world reborn. Every legend of a sunken land, a tribute to what once was. And perhaps, in their way, they preserved something no flood could erase.
The will to remember. The earth remembers. The ocean remembers.
And through them, we remember. But this is only one chapter in a much greater mystery. Because Sunderland was not the only world the sea took back. Beringia, the bridge between worlds. Before the Age of Nations, before the first great civilizations rose from the dust, there was ice and silence. For tens of thousands of years, the northern world was a frozen empire. Continents were bound together by cold. Oceans froze into bridges. And across one of these bridges, connecting Asia and North America, humanity crossed into a new world. They called it Beringia, a land bridge that once stretched 1,500 kilometers wide, linking Siberia and Alaska across what is now the Bering Strait. Today, that strait is only 85 kilometers of frigid sea. But once, it was a living continent. A place where mammoths roamed, where humans hunted, and where two halves of the world met. Ice Cube, the world of ice and wind. Imagine a landscape neither ocean nor land, but both. The sea floor exposed, the air sharp with the breath of glaciers.
To the north, endless sheets of ice.
To the south, grasslands stretching beyond the horizon.
And on those plains, life.
Mammoths, steppe bison, woolly rhinos, reindeer, wolves. A frozen Serengeti, vast and alive. It was a harsh paradise, where the temperature could drop below -40. But where life had adapted perfectly to survive. And among those creatures moved small bands of humans.
Hunters, wrapped in furs.
Their firelight glowing beneath the auroras. They did not yet know it. But every step they took would change the fate of humanity forever. Man walking the first journey to a new world. Around 25,000 years ago, during the height of the last glacial maximum, sea levels were over 120 meters lower than today. Massive ice sheets locked up the ocean's water, revealing hidden lands. Between Siberia and Alaska, the Bering Land Bridge emerged. This was not a narrow crossing, it was a continent in itself. Spanning what is now the Chukchi Sea, the Bering Sea, and part of the Arctic Ocean. It was a world of tundra and steppe, rich with game. For the hunter-gatherers of Ice Age Asia, it was a lifeline. They followed the herds, mammoths, caribou, and muskox.
Moving east across the endless plains.
They didn't know they were leaving one continent for another. To them, it was all one vast cold world. But when they stepped onto the far side, they entered a land no human had ever seen before.
The Unterucht Wilderness of North America. Strich.
Globe showing Europe-Africa, a bridge that became a barrier. For a time, Beringia was a highway of migration. Generations crossed it, families, tribes, entire cultures on the move. But as the world warmed, the glaciers began to melt.
Sea levels rose again, slowly droning the bridge beneath its waters.
By 10,000 years ago, Beringia was gone. Swallowed by the same sea it once revealed. What had been a connection became a divide. The people who remained in America were now cut off from those in Asia. Forever separated by the Bering Strait. In that moment, two human stories began to unfold. One in the old world, one in the new. Two civilizations, born from the same ancestors, but destined never to meet again for over 10,000 years.
Strich. Traces in Blut and Bohne.
For centuries, scientists wondered how the first Americans arrived. Were they always here, or did they come from somewhere else? The answer came not from stones, but from DNA. Genetic research revealed that all indigenous peoples of the Americas share ancestral links to populations from Siberia and East Asia. Evidence of that ancient crossing through Beringia. In fact, their DNA carries a unique signature found nowhere else. A genetic echo of a people who lived in isolation for thousands of years. This has led scientists to propose the Beringian standstill hypothesis. The idea that humans lived on the land bridge itself for millennia.
Treppet between walls of ice. Waiting for the glaciers to retreat before journeying deeper into the Americas. Imagine that, generations born, living, and doing. On a frozen bridge between walls.
Their fires flickering beneath the eternal twilight of the Ice Age.
Strich. The vanishing giants.
But Beringia was not only the birthplace of migration. It was also the graveyard of giants. Around 12,000 years ago, the great megafauna, the mammoths, the saber-toothed cats, the giant ground sloths,
all began to disappear.
Some blame climate change. Others, the arrival of humans armed with spears tipped in obsidian. Perhaps it was both, a perfect storm of warming, hunger, and change. The disappearance of these creatures marked the end of an age.
The earth was transforming.
And with it, humanity itself.
Strich. Immergrün the memory of the bridge.
Though the sea swallowed Beringia, its memory lives on in the traditions of the people of the north. The Yupik and Inuit tell stories of a time when their ancestors could walk to the other side of the world. In their legends, the land was alive. A place of endless plains, where animals spoke and spirits walked freely. Some even described the sound of the sea reclaiming the land. As though the earth itself sighed as it disappeared. These stories, passed down for thousands of years, are more than myth, they are memory. Echoes of a time when two continents were one. Rediscovering the lost bridge. Today, the Bering Strait seems empty. A cold, narrow sea between Russia and Alaska. But beneath its waters lies a buried landscape still frozen in time. Using sonar and ice-penetrating radar, scientists have mapped ancient river valleys, hills, and even fossilized lakes beneath the seafloor. Some areas still preserve the bones of mammoths and musk oxen, trapped in the permafrost for tens of thousands of years. If the ice continues to melt, as it now does faster than ever.
Wie Mai von de Sese secrets of Beringia Reisegen. Strich. The birth of the American Peoples.
From those first crossings came the ancestors of every indigenous culture in the Americas. From the Inuit of the Arctic to the Maya, the Inca, and the Aztec in the south. All of them carry within their blood the memory of that journey. The passage across the bridge of ice and wind. Every story of creation, every song of origin, is in some way a retelling of that first migration. Of people who followed the stars and the herds. Into a land of promise and peril.
They didn't just discover a new continent.
They began a new chapter of humanity. Milky Way, the bridge that still connects us.
Though the bridge is gone, its spirit still binds us.
The people of Alaska and Siberia still share languages, traditions, and beliefs. Remnants of the time when their ancestors walked the same ground. The land bridge may have drowned, but the connection it forged between continents,
between cultures, between the human heart and the earth, that remains unbroken. The world changes. Land becomes sea. Bridges vanish.
But memory endures. The story of Beringia is not about loss. It's about discovery, courage, and the will to keep moving forward, even when the world itself shifts beneath your feet. Doggerland, Europe's lost Stone Age kingdom. Long before there was England. Before the word Europe even meant anything. There was a vast, living land beneath what we now call the North Sea. A world of rivers and forests. Of wild horses and red deer. Of people who hunted, fished, and sang under open skies. That world is gone now. Swallowed by the rising tides of time. But beneath the cold gray waves of the North Sea, its memory remains. They call it Doggerland. The lost heart of Stone Age Europe. A vanished kingdom that once connected Britain to the rest of the continent. And whose drowning may have inspired some of the earliest flood myths humanity ever told. Globe showing Europe, Africa, a hidden continent beneath the waves. 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age was ending. The glaciers that had buried Europe for millennia were melting. As the ice retreated, new rivers carved through the land, feeding a rich plain that stretched from what is now the Netherlands to the eastern coast of England. Doggerland was not a small island. It was enormous, larger than modern Britain. A landscape of rolling hills, winding rivers, and wide grasslands. Mammoths still roamed the plains. Reindeer migrated across the valleys. And along the shores of ancient lakes, humans built their camps. The Mesolithic hunter-gatherers who called this land home. Camping the people of Doggerland. Archaeologists believe Doggerland was a hub. A crossroads where groups from across Ice Age Europe met and mingled. They hunted red deer and wild boar. Fished in shallow estuaries.
And built tools from flint and bone.
Their world was alive with rhythm. The sound of waves. The crackle of fire. The stories whispered through generations. They did not see themselves as primitive. To them, the land and sea were sacred. Living spirits to be honored. Forces that gave and took in equal measure. And in the heart of Doggerland,
rising up over the planks,
stood what some researchers now call the Dogger Hills. A high ridge that remained dry long after the lowlands drowned. It may have been a gathering place. A center of worship. Or perhaps even a kind of Stone Age sanctuary.
Strich. Wasserwelle the slow droning.
But change was coming. The earth was warming. The seas began to rise, slowly at first, then faster. Rivers swelled, valleys flooded, and coastlines retreated inland. Imagine standing on that plain.
Wetting the horizon move closer everyear.
The forests where your ancestors hunted now gone beneath the waves. The sacred hills becoming islands. It didn't happen in a single day, it took centuries. But to those who lived through it, it must have felt like the end of the world. And then, around 8,000 years ago, a cataclysm struck. A massive underwater landslide, known as the Storegga Slide, occurred off the coast of Norway, displacing billions of tons of earth and rock into the sea. The result, a colossal tsunami that swept across the North Atlantic. Waves as high as 20 meters crashed into the coasts of Scotland and Norway. And in its path, Doggerland vanished. The flood that had begun slowly now ended violently.
Erasing the last traces of the land forever. Strich.
Spiral shell, the sea that remembers. Today, fishermen in the North Sea still dredge up the bones of that lost world. Tusks of mammoths, antlers of giant deer. Tools carved by human hands thousands of years ago. even the skulls of men, women, and children, preserved in the cold seabed. Each discovery is a fragment of a forgotten civilization.
Avispa rising from Beniace Tides.
Sonar imaging and seabed mapping now reveal ancient river valleys, marshes, and even possible village sites beneath the water. It's as if the North Sea hides an entire chapter of human history, one we are only beginning to read again.
Strich.
Compass myth and memory. For centuries, stories have been told of lands lost to the sea. The Celtic legends of Canterarg Gaelad, the drowned kingdom. The Dutch myths of Campenland and Veneta. Even the story of Atlantis, told by Plato, echoes with the same ancient truth. That once there was land where now there is ocean. Perhaps these are not just myths,
but memories.
The last echoes of Doggerland's drowning, carried through time as stories of divine floods and vanished worlds. DNA, the blood of the forgotten. DNA analysis from ancient remains found along Europe's northern coasts suggests that the people of Doggerland were the ancestors of many modern Europeans. A link between Ice Age hunters and the first Neolithic farmers who would later build Stonehenge. They were not lost, they adapted. As the waters rose, they moved inland. Their children carried the memory of the sea in their songs, and the knowledge of the land beneath it in their hearts. Sunrise echoes beneath the waves. In 2019, scientists scanning the seabed discovered what appears to be the outline of ancient river systems beneath the North Sea, complete with tributaries, deltas, and floodplains. It's the ghost map of Doggerland. A reminder that the world we know today is only temporary. Every coastline, every sea, every mountain once looked different. And perhaps, thousands of years from now, our cities too will lie beneath the waves. Our own Doggerlands waiting to be rediscovered. Milky Way, the kingdom that lives in memory. Doggerland was not a legend. It was real, a land of people, of stories, of dreams. And though the sea took it back, its spirit endures. Every wave that crashes against Britain's eastern shore is a whisper from that lost world. A world where the first Europeans hunted, loved, and built their lives. On soil now buried beneath the ocean. The sea remembers. And through it, we remember too. Sunderland, the drowned continent of the East.
Before the jungles, before the islands, there was a continent.
A massive green world stretching from Malaysia to Indonesia. From the shores of Vietnam to the edges of Australia.
It was called Sunderland.
A place where mountains kissed the sky. Where rivers wound like silver through endless forests. And where humans, animals, and legends were born together. Today, all that remains are islands.
Java, Sumatra, Borneo, the Philippines.
But once, they were connected. Part of a single landmass larger than India. A world now drowned beneath the waves. Globe showing Europe-Africa, the lost continent beneath our feet. 12,000 years ago. When the last ice age ended, the world looked very different. Vast ice sheets still covered the poles. And global sea levels were more than 100 meters lower than they are today. Where the South China Sea now lies, there was fertile land. Lush plains, winding rivers, and shallow lakes. Ancient coastlines stretched far beyond today's shores. What we now call the islands of Indonesia were once one continuous expanse of green. It was here that early humans, Homo erectus, Homo floresiensis, and later Homo sapiens, roamed freely. Archaeologists call this region a cradle of humanity in the East. A place where cultures, species, and ideas mixed across tens of thousands of years.
A world alive.
Imagine walking through ancient Sunderland. You would see elephants, tigers, and rhinoceroses moving through vast forests. Giant monitor lizards, the ancestors of Komodo dragons, lurked along the coasts. And in the highlands, humans hunted with stone tools, painted symbols on cave walls, and told stories beneath starlit skies. The rivers carried canoes filled with shellfish and fruits. The air was heavy with humidity and birdsong. And the sea, still far away, shimmered at the edge of a continent that seemed endless. This was not a forgotten world. It was alive. And it may have been one of the most
advanced Stone Age regions on Earth. Strich. The people of the drowned land.
For generations, the people of Sunderland lived in harmony with the tides and forests. They were expert navigators long before the great civilizations of Egypt or Mesopotamia ever existed. Their descendants would one day become the Austronesians, the great seafarers who spread across the Pacific, reaching as far as Hawaii, Easter Island, and New Zealand. Genetic studies reveal something remarkable. Traces of ancient Sundaland ancestry still flow in millions of people today. From the islands of Indonesia to the coastal tribes of Madagascar.
The blood of Sunderland lives on. Strich. Wasserwelle the great float.
But then, the waters began to rise. As the Ice Age ended, glaciers melted rapidly, sending billions of tons of water into the oceans.
The coasts receded. Forests became swamps.
And slowly, inch by inch, the sea reclaimed the land. For the people of Sunderland, it must have seemed as though the world itself was breaking apart. Islands formed where mountains once stood. Villages were swallowed by the sea. Ancient river valleys became seabeds. Around 8,000 years ago, the flood reached its peak.
The great pleng was gone. Burit beneath the South China Sea, the Java Sea, and the Andaman waters.
But memories remained. And from those memories came the stories.
Echoes in myth.
Across Asia, from India to the Pacific, stories of a drowned kingdom appear again and again. In Malay legends, it was said that once there was a vast land swallowed by the sea. A land ruled by powerful kings and guarded by serpent gods. In Javanese myth, it became a tala.
A shining world destroyed by the wrath of the ocean.
In Hindu cosmology, it echoes as Kumari Kandam, a sunken realm south of India said to be the home of the first poets and sages. And in the West, some believe these tales merged into the legend of Lemuria, a mysterious continent thought to bridge Africa and Asia. Perhaps all these stories are fragments of one shared memory, a collective echo of the drowning of Sunderland. Compass the evidence beneath the waves. Modern science is beginning to uncover proof of this lost world. Using underwater mapping, researchers have found traces of ancient rivers beneath the South China and Java Seas, channels that match those of Ice Age landscapes. Sonar imaging reveals the outlines of hills, valleys, and even deltas that would have supported human life. Off the coast of Sumatra and Borneo, divers have discovered stone tools, pottery, and carvings, evidence of a vanished culture now buried under layers of silt. These are not myths. They are the physical remains of a world we once walked upon. Classical building the first civilization? Some scientists have begun to ask. Was Sunderland home to one of humanity's first complex societies? Its size, climate, and resources could have supported vast populations. Its rivers provided trade routes. And its coasts offered passage to every corner of the Pacific. If this is true, then Sunderland may have been a birthplace of civilization. A forgotten chapter that predates Egypt, Sumer, and China. When it sank, its people fled, carrying their myths, their tools, and their knowledge to new lands. Perhaps the seeds of agriculture, astronomy, and navigation were first planted here, beneath the drowned jungles of the East. What the sea took, the stars remember. As night falls over the modern islands of Indonesia, you can still feel it. The pulse of the old continent beneath your feet. The tides whisper against the shores, as if remembering the forests and rivers that once lay there. Sunderland may be gone, but its story survives. In the DNA of its people. In the myths of floods and golden ages. And in the silent shapes hidden beneath the ocean floor. When we look into the waters of the Java Sea, we are not just looking at an ocean.
We are staring into the ghost of our continent.
And into the memory of who we once were.
The forgotten ice world. Beringia, the bridge between worlds.
Before the world we know took shape. Before nations, before cities.
There was ice.
A vast, unbroken cold that stretched from Siberia to Alaska.
A frozen wilderness where mammoths roamed.
Where the ground itself glittered with frost.
And where, for a brief moment in time, two continents touched.
This place was Beringia. A bridge of earth and ice connecting Asia and North America. It was not a narrow passage, but a landmass the size of a small continent, teeming with life, and echoing with the footsteps of the first humans to ever cross into a new world.
Strich. Schneeflocke a land born of ice.
20,000 years ago, the Earth was locked in its last great ice age. So much water was trapped in glaciers that sea levels were more than 120 meters lower than today.
Where the Bering Strait now separates Siberia from Alaska.
A vast stretch of tundra and steppe emerged. A frozen plain that connected two worlds. This was Beringia. A cold, windswept, yet surprisingly rich ecosystem. Moss, grasses, and wild herbs covered the ground. Herds of mammoth, bison, and reindeer grazed across the endless horizon. Wolves and saber-toothed cats stalked the herds. And above them, small bands of humans hunted, built fires, and looked to the stars.
It was harsh, but it was home.
4 centuries, perhaps millennia. Beringia was not a bridge to be crossed,
but a world to be lived in. Strich.
Camping the first Americans. Archaeological evidence suggests that humans first reached Siberia around 30,000 years ago. From there, they followed herds and rivers eastward, eventually reaching the open expanse of Beringia.
Here they settled, building temporary camps,
crafting tools from bone and stone, and learning to survive in the extremes of cold and darkness. For generations, they lived between 2 worlds, neither fully in Asia nor in the Americas. They adapted, evolved, and waited until the ice began to melt. When the great glaciers of North America began to retreat,
a corridor opened between them,
a narrow passage leading south into a land untouched by human hands. And so, the journey continued. Across that corridor,
through forests and plains,
humans spread across the Americas, becoming the ancestors of countless indigenous peoples, whose traditions still remember, in myth and legend.
The Long Journey from the North. Strich. Milchstraße MYTHS of origin.
In the stories of many Native American tribes, there are echoes of this great migration. Some speak of ancestors who came from the land that touches the rising sun. Others tell of people who crossed a path of ice when the world was young. And in the frozen regions of Alaska and Siberia,
Oral Traditionsdescribe Atheim wen, the Sifroze.
And one could walk from one land to another. These are not just myths. They are memories carried in story and spirit. Fragments of human history whispered across millennia.
Strich.
DNA and discovery. Modern science has begun to confirm what these stories always suggested. Through the study of ancient DNA, geneticists have traced the ancestry of Native American peoples to small groups who lived in Beringia between 25,000 and 15,000 years ago. These people, isolated by ice for thousands of years, developed unique genetic markers, a Beringian signature that still exists today in the DNA of indigenous peoples across North and South America. It is as if the land itself left an imprint, a genetic echo of the bridge that once was.
The vanishing of our world.
But as the ice melted, the oceans began to rise.
The rivers gräswollen.
The tundra turned to marsh.
And the great planks of Beringia disappeared beneath the waves.
By around 10,000 years ago, the bridge was gone, swallowed by the waters of the Arctic and the Bering Sea. The people who had once lived upon it were now separated by an ocean, their shared world lost forever. But they carried its memory with them, in songs, in carvings, and in the quiet reverence for the northern lights that still shimmer above the Arctic skies. Milky Way of frozen memory beneath the sea. Today, deep beneath the cold waters between Russia and Alaska, lie the bones of mammoths,
the footprints of hunters, and the remnants of a vanished ecosystem.
Scientists using sonar and drilling technology have begun to map these submerged lands. They found traces of river channels, ancient soil layers,
and even pollen.
Proof that once, this was a living, breathing land. It is humbling to realize that the birthplace of 2 continents' peoples now sleeps beneath the sea. Telescope a bridge between worlds. Beringia is not just a geological phenomenon.
It is a symbol.
A reminder of how interconnected the human story truly is. Every step we take today, from the Americas to Asia, from one shore to another, echoes that ancient crossing. The bridge may have vanished, but the connection endures. In blood, in memory, and in spirit. When we look across the icy waters of the Bering Strait today, we are not just seeing a divide. We are seeing the ghost of a bridge. A path that once united the world. It was not courage alone that drove them.
It was instinct.
A quiet voice that spoke from the earth itself.
The world is lagertan, you know.
That voice carried them through ice and storm, through hunger and fear. And it carried them across the bridge that no longer exists. And though the bridge has long been swallowed by the sea, its memory connects us still.
Our silent triad that binds ever shore. Every tribe, every story. Wen we look across oceans today. Wen we starre into the vast blue expanse.
That divides continents and nations. We are not looking at separation. We are looking at what once was connection. The earth has always moved.
Not to divide us.
But to remind us that everything is temporary.
Except the journée.
Every island was once part of a greater land. Every people were once one. And every boundary
Ever border.
Is only the shadow of what time has taken away.
Strich. The lost land bridge may never rise again. But its story will.
It lives in our steps.
In our curiosity.
In the human need to explore what lies beyond. For as long as there are explorers, dreamers and storytellers.
The bridge between worlds will never be truly lost. Because we, humanity, are the bridge.